Welcome to Vermontitude, a collaborative effort between Great Eastern Radio, the Brattleboro Reformer, and BCTV to bring you the stories behind the stories on the topics you want to learn more about. Because there's always more, so there'll always be Vermontitude. Hosted by me, Peter Fish Case. Welcome to Vermontitude. New episodes drop every Tuesday and can be found by going to Vermontitude.com, Reformer.com, Brattleboro.tv, and locally on Comcast Channel 1078. We come to you from the studios at the Innovation Box on Flat Street. I'm Peter Fish Case, and each week I cover the topics that are of concern to Windham County and the towns that reside within its borders. Joining Vermontitude today, Gunsense Vermont's board member Bob Williamson and former board member Elissa Pine. Gunsense Vermont was founded in 2012 by Ann Braden and takes a nonpartisan approach to assuring all Vermonters are free from gun violence. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Bob, let's start with you right out of the gate. You've got a very personal connection with this mission. Can you explain that?
Certainly, Peter. And thank you again for having us. 35 years ago, I was sitting on a commuter train in Chicago coming home to my sleepy little town, Winnetka. And I was listening to my Walkman radio, and a news bulletin cut in, said there'd been a shooting in a suburban school, Hubbard Woods Elementary School in Winnetka, Illinois. That's my hometown. I had 2 daughters in the school that day. Had to sit on that train for 45 minutes and hope for the best, pray that the worst hadn't happened. The worst 45 minutes of my life. When I got to the station, my wife Joan met me there, said, Claire and Kate are okay, but Nikki Corwin is dead. Peter, the shooter was still at large in the neighborhood. There was a police helicopter flying overhead. It felt as though the copter's blades were knocking chunks of sky out of thin air and they were shattering at my feet. It was a warm spring day, but it felt as cold as January. We walked over to pick up our kids at the school, came back. When I was able to piece together what had happened that day, I realized there was nothing I could do to change what had happened. But I made a personal pledge to do whatever made sense to prevent such things from happening again. And that's what led me to working with the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence, where I chaired the annual walk in Chicago for a decade.
Right. Started
a contest for kids, because kids are so often the victims of gun violence. They don't have a voice. Wanted to give them that voice. For 18 years, that contest ran. Kids won brand new laptop computers. They're sponsoring teachers. Got a $100 bookstore gift certificate. It's great to empower kids. The mayor had them at press conferences. We wanted to invest in their learning with the computers, validate their message, have them speak at our annual walk against gun violence that I chaired for 10 years. Wanted to empower their schoolmates. We had awards assemblies at their schools to encourage their classmates to raise their voices against gun violence. It's good, but yet what we ended up doing, we leveraged the support at our walk into passing what was then the Safe Neighborhoods Law in Chicago, in Illinois.
Right.
It made a Class 4 felony of carrying a loaded, unsecured firearm in your car a Class 4 felony. In the 3 years that was law, drive-by shootings in Chicago dropped by 41%.
Yeah, so simple legislation makes all the difference in the world.
If you pass a smart law, you'll save lives.
Yeah, you will.
That's what I'm about.
Well, that's good for you. It's a Herculean task. I don't, we had a brief moment to discuss before we push play on everything, and it's got to be long, hard work. Elissa, let's talk about your drive to engage in this kind of work.
Well, I would say I got pulled into Gunsense Vermont in particular because of Ann Braden.
Okay.
She was my daughter's social studies teacher, and I was really impressed by her. Like many people, I was really affected by the shooting at Sandy Hook. I have family in Newtown, and I actually attended the Labor Day Parade, which is their biggest celebration. I attended that the year that they had that shooting, and it was heart-wrenching. It was really heart-wrenching. And so Anne was really jazzed up, I'd say, and so I joined in with her enthusiasm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an awful day, but it always I always kind of harken back to this thing like if a Sandy Hook can happen and things don't instantly change, like what's the magic pill? What is the answer? How if you can take something like Sandy Hook, Uvalde, I mean the list goes on and on.
Yes.
And you know, right now we're in this culture that you know, we'll just go, oh man, another school shooting, that's awful, and you know, what are we having for dinner?
Right.
You know,
right.
how do we change that thinking?
Right,
what do we do?
Well, we have been changing, and Gunsense Vermont and Ann were instrumental for that change here in Vermont. Mm-hmm. We worked very hard to get a safe storage law passed. Before Gunsense, I was working on a safe storage law. I got a call from a lady I didn't even know. Ji Wu lives in Essex Junction. Her son had committed suicide. They didn't even own a firearm. I won't go into all the details of how he got his hands on the gun, but we wanted to get a safe storage law. Sat for 3 years in committee on the wall, didn't move.
Right.
We get Gunsense Vermont, and shows up at the State House. She's got petitions signed by 5,000 people. This is in 2013.
Right.
Okay. That really starts the ball moving forward. About a year or two later, people are saying, they used to say before Gunsense, well, what does the NRA say about this bill? Now they're saying, what does Gunsense Vermont think about this bill? That's a sea change right there.
Yeah.
Okay, 2018, we got significant change. And the governor, as you alluded to in our previous conversation, signed bills to require stronger background checks.
Yep.
That's banning high-capacity ammo clips and other measures that do make us safer. But it wasn't until this year, which was Gunsense's best year ever, we passed the safe storage law. If you're negligently storing a firearm in your home and it gets used by someone who shouldn't, a child or someone who's stealing it, you'll be criminally liable. We also have a 72-hour waiting period, which is really important to prevent suicide. Suicide and domestic violence are the biggest forms of gun violence in Vermont. Not the only. We also have homicides, and we're seeing an increase in that around the state.
We are.
But we are making significant progress. We need to do more. We need to look at and deal with AR-15s. I'm really concerned about people who say, well, we need to harden our schools. Schools are pretty hardened already.
Yeah.
We need to harden our communities, our states, and our Congress on this issue.
You know, these things that we talk about, these amendments and things like that people get up in arms about. No pun intended.
Right.
But they need to realize, like, a lot of these are hundreds of years old. You know, it's like driving a car that's 200 years old. You don't operate it the way you did when you pulled it off the lot.
True.
Things change. Things adapt.
True.
You know, we talked a little bit about where I grew up in a very rural community where we're seeing 3 rifles in a wide open pickup truck that was running was not an uncommon thing, and nobody ever thought of it. That thinking has now changed. We are no longer in that place, in that space anymore. And I don't know what it takes to get people to understand that. I mean, Elissa, you've done this work. I mean, what's the most frustrating conversation that you have when it comes to changing the way people think?
I think people just see it as a black and white issue. You're either pro-gun or anti-gun.
Right.
But that's not necessarily the case. We are not an anti-gun organization. We are just for the safety measures involved in those guns.
Right.
So you get a lot of the rhetoric. You get a lot of the slippery slope and, you know, you take my guns. And they're just like broadcast speaking points that come back at you.
But those are the things that get repeated. Those easy, the bold print, I call it. Just you know, all the bold print stuff is what kind of comes up again and again and again, and you're constantly having to butt up against it. And everybody thinks you're trying to take everybody's guns. No, we're not trying to take everybody's guns. Just the people we're concerned about.
In 2009, I did a forum for the Windsor County Democrats in Heartland, and 50 people showed up on a snowy day.
Yeah.
And there were 2 folks there, one from Gun Owners of Vermont, who wanted to hijack the event and make it a debate. It wasn't a debate. It was a forum. We had the state's attorney from Windsor County. We had the the head of WISE, Women's Information Services for battered women's. We had the head of injury prevention at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. We had a school psychologist who were there pointing, and the whole forum was around gun violence, Vermont's unspoken health epidemic.
Right.
Because we have huge suicide and domestic violence problem in this state. And the next night, I got a phone call at about 11 o'clock at night. Guy said, "Is this Bob Williamson?" I said, "Yeah." "You don't know me. I'm not from Vermont. But have you ever heard of the Second Amendment?" And I said, "Yeah. Can you recite to me the 26 words?" There's this long pause.
Yeah, I love that.
He couldn't remember the Second Amendment, the whole Second Amendment. He says, "You're a real hero, Bob," and he hung up. I checked. He'd called from Kentucky.
Yeah.
So they put the word out.
Yeah.
They're trying to smoke us out and get us away from this. Everybody needs to be responsible about how they live their lives. I mean, we don't let kids have access to our liquor cabinets.
Right.
Why should they have access to our gun safes?
I asked
and the argument about, well, I may need to get my gun in a hurry to defend myself. Let's say you're out in your barn changing the oil in your truck, and the bad guy comes. You're going to say, "Wait a minute, I got something for you upstairs in my bedroom."
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
It's not going to happen.
How many guns are you going to feel safe? I was in Montpelier for a hearing of one of our bills, and I was sitting next to a young man, Kyle, great kid. He's on the other side of the issue.
Sure.
I said, "How many guns do you have, Kyle?" "I probably got 100. I think I'm going to go buy another AR-15 this weekend. They might be banning those." How many do you need to be safe? I know there's a lot of fear out there, and that's been spiking gun sales.
Sure.
But does that mean, do you panic? I think you got to be smart about it.
Well, that it goes to what Elissa said, and the talking point issues, all of that. I mean, we discussed, giving a kid doesn't, when they turn 15 and they can get their learner's permit, or 16, whatever it is now, you don't just flip them the keys and say, "Go here." No, there's a process. There's a waiting period. You have to learn how to use it. You have to learn how to be respectful on the road. You have to learn the rules. You have to do that. And I know that. I went to school with kids who took hunter safety courses before they could get their hunting
I'm all
license.
for that. I'm all for that.
But let's touch on one thing, that Gunsense Vermont is not people that are just comprised of people who don't own guns and are not. You have several people who own guns.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of gun owners with Gunsense.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah. A good friend of mine, Bill Badger, who I'm trying to remember where he lives. He was Pomfret, yeah. Sadly, he died recently, but lifelong hunter, loved it, as do many. They like to put food on their table and share it with friends and family. But he would come and he would testify.
Right.
One of our board members, Gunover, lives right here in Brattleboro area, Mel Martin. People grow up with these guns.
They do.
They have fond memories of being with fathers, grandfathers, uncles in the woods during deer season. There's a lot of kids that don't go to school when deer season's open.
Right.
A lot of absentees. Sometimes schools will just shut down in rural areas because they know their kids. God bless them. I hope they get that venison for Thanksgiving, or turkey if it's turkey season.
It's all good.
Absolutely.
I don't have a problem with hunting. I've just, and the funny thing is in the conversations I've had is we're not coming after responsible gun owners. People are not coming after responsible gun owners. In fact, the reason that we're here is because of the irresponsible gun owners.
Exactly.
Not, and most of the people you talk to are largely responsible gun owners and who just don't have enough of a conversation. Now, the whole reason we're sort of here is that Ann Braden, who is the founder, will be receiving a Leadership and Courage Award on September 6th at the Brattleboro Museum and Arts Center. You can get your tickets by going to gunsensevt.org. Becca Ballant will be there as a speaker, so this will be a nice honor for her. We tried to get her on the program, it just didn't align. So I want to thank both of you for taking the time out of your schedule to jump on. Anything you want to leave us with?
Sure. I think we got to look at the big picture and the little picture simultaneously. Since 1970, this country has lost more citizens to gun violence than in all of our wars, going back to the American Revolutionary War. Every year we lose more than 45,000 people. Imagine you're at a World Series game at Fenway Park and blink. All those people are gone in a year in this country. 3 times that number survive with a lifelong crippling injury. I've met too many people over my 35 years of this work who are in wheelchairs. They've lost a son or a daughter. It tears your heart when you hear them make testimony. My son was killed because the ex-boyfriend came in and was jealous and shot somebody. I want to dispel the fact that putting all this on mental health, that's a fallacy.
Yeah.
Most homicides are carried out by normal people who are gripped with rage and have easy access to a firearm. We have over 400 million firearms in our country, over 20 million AR-15 type rifles. And we've got over 460 mass shootings in this country this year so far. Kids are going back to school. What are we going to do to make them safe? We need to build trusting, meaningful relationships in schools. I'm a former teacher, so's Ann Braden, so's Becca Ballant. I don't think any of them would have advocated for arming teachers.
No.
I mean, those are children. You're entrusted there to teach them everything. Are you going to hesitate to shoot one in a horrible situation? And when the police arrive, how are they going to tell who's the good guy, who's the bad guy?
Exactly.
We got to be smarter about this.
Well, thank you for the good work that you're doing. Elissa, thank you for the good work that you've done, and I'm sure that you're still involved in it on certain levels, and I just thank you for doing what you do.
Thanks for having us, Peter.
And take care.
Thank you.
You bet.